All right. So welcome everybody. To any of those of you that I don't know, I'm Angela. I'm the dog behavior specialist at HSHV, and I'm sure that I know that I've talked to many of you or have seen you at other presentations, or maybe I've communicated with email. We've checked in to see how a foster dog is doing in your home. So it's nice to kind of meet some of you virtually anyway, if we've only ever talked on email. This is kind of part of something that we're trying to do ongoing to help give support to our fosters who may be, having to deal with some various behavior issues, concerns, common problems, whatever. So we're going to not only have these available hopefully every other month, so you can on different topics that you can join and ask questions live, and also maintain a library so people can look back at the recordings if issues come up, for future fosters. So the last time we met a couple months ago, let's see, sorry. I'm not camping. I am in my camper though, because I do live in a multi-pet household, including parrots. And so my camper tends to be my location of Zoom meetings, so you don't have to compete with squawking parrots in the back. And as I said, I do have many species in my house. So I'm going to be talking not just about dogs with foster dogs with other dogs, but dogs with cats and other small animals. I won't really be talking about livestock, but hopefully that's not probably the most common issue. But tonight we're going to be talking about fostering dogs when you have other pets in the home, and how to do introductions, keep things peaceful, troubleshoot, etc. And as I said, I'll be talking about dogs with dogs and dogs with cats, and a little bit about other species as well. As always, feel free to ask questions at any point, either via the chat, or if you want to turn your mic on to pop in and ask a question live, that's fine too. I'm happy to have people ask as we're going on. I will pause at the end for questions and answers, but definitely if something comes up, it's always fun when it's a conversation. So to start out, talking about probably what is one of the most common issues is bringing a potential foster dog home if you already have other dogs in your house. And before you meet the dog that you're interested in fostering, in most cases, that shelter dog will have had some kind of assessment with another dog at the shelter. So we have some indication of how social they are, or if they have any kind of selectivity or preferences with other dogs. There may be some exceptions. Sometimes we're not always able to do a dog test while they're there, possibly because of medical reasons. If you're taking a medical foster who's not been very mobile, maybe just hasn't been appropriate to introduce them to another dog. With small breed dogs or young dogs under 6 months, so dogs under 30 pounds and puppies under 6 months, we don't routinely do dog tests. So we may have to either do one, or maybe the interaction with your dog will be the first one, but we will do that at the shelter so we can help coach you and make sure it goes okay. When you get those foster requests, you're probably seeing that it will indicate which dogs will be able to go to a home with another dog. We do not, as I will be talking about cats in a bit, we do not cat test at the shelter for a variety of reasons. It's not a particularly reliable method of assessing how a dog is going to behave in a home with a particular cat by just sort of bringing them into a room in a shelter with a cat. Plus, it's just not fair to shelter cats who are already under a lot of stress to subject them to being the guinea pigs there. So we will talk about protocols for going slow with any resident cats you might have, and how to keep those safe and peaceful, those introductions. But just know that we most likely don't have any information about how a dog is with a cat unless they were surrendered by a home where they lived with a cat previously. So then we might have some background. And if you are interested in fostering and you let us know, we will be setting up dog intro at the shelter to make sure that they're compatible. There may be, again, some rare exceptions to that. Maybe you're taking a medical foster home that you have no intention of having interact with your resident dog. As long as you have a management strategy in place, that might be an exception. So the dog intros generally will happen at the shelter, up either in the one of the parking lots, the play yard, the ed center, or some combination of those. Usually we start to do a parallel walk, maybe some on-leash greetings, possibly build up to some off-leash play and interaction, if the dogs are interested. But assuming that all goes well with the introduction, you should have a plan for how you're going to get that foster home, because it's probably pretty risky, if nothing else, just as a driver, to put two loose dogs in your car who are very unfamiliar with each other and try to get home. So, some strategies you could have if you're able to physically separate the dogs in the car. I have a minivan with multiple crates, airline crates in the back of my minivan. So when I transport my dogs, they're separate in separate crates anyway. That might work. You could come with another family member using a separate car, and you can drive separately home, one with each dog. Or you can always come back at another time, drop your dog off, take them home, and then come back for the foster dog later that day or the next day. But we do want, you to be safe when driving. Our dog intros, we want to feel pretty sure that things are going to go okay, but just setting them loose in a car when you're can't really intervene. If something goes wrong, they'll be problematic, and two excited dogs, even if they're doing okay, could interfere with driving, obviously. So once you get home, continue to go slow. Maybe they were doing great at the shelter, but your dog might have some concerns, objections, surprise to the fact that now this new friend is suddenly coming into their home and is going to be sharing space with them. So have a plan to be able to give each other their own space so that they can slowly adjust to being in the house together, and so that each dog can have a break at given times. So maybe have a plan before you bring the dog home of, where can your dog chill out? Where's the foster dog going to spend, certainly like the first day and night? Who's going to be with each dog to make sure that they get enough attention? With any management strategies you're going to use, it's best, certainly with your own dog, to get them used to those already. So if they have a certain room, or they're going to be asked to be settling behind a baby gate while you're in another area, make sure they're comfortable and they've been trained to accept that, so that it's not suddenly really distressing if they are tossed behind a baby gate and you go off into the living room with the foster dog. It's good to have some shared activities. Parallel walks are a really nice thing to do. And parallel walks can be side by side, but they don't have to be, especially if the dogs are still a little nervous or getting to know each other. Can work well to take the dog someplace neutral and walk on opposite sides of the street, or one dog following each other at a distance and gradually getting closer until they can walk along and share a walk together. If you have a fenced in yard, maybe take them into the yard when you get home and allow their first off-leash interaction in an area that is less confined and allows more options to move away and do their own thing before then bringing them into the house, if that's possible. And definitely supervise all of their interactions, especially during the early days. And don't be afraid to give breaks if they are not taking breaks on their own. If somebody looks like they're trying to check out and get away and needs a rest, go ahead and step in, and again, use management to prevent problems. Crates, baby gates, having leashes drag are all good ideas. One of the most common things that can occur in multi-dog or multi-species households is resource guarding from one another. And with dog resource guarding, people should realize this is extremely normal behavior. Doesn't always indicate that a dog will resource guard from humans, but it's very, very common that they will want to protect their rawhides and chew bones and food bowls, and sometimes their sleeping spaces or just their attention from their humans from other dogs. So with this, really, prevention is the best policy. We don't need to set dogs up to fail or test to see what happens. With a foster dog, I would plan to use management and prevention pretty much throughout their stay. So we recommend that you feed your dogs with some type of physical separation between them, whether it's in separate rooms, a baby gate between, one dog in a crate, the other out, or both dogs in a crate. But have some kind of physical barrier between them, and pick up bowls when both have access to the same spot. Same goes for enrichment items, food type items such as stuffed Kongs, chew bones, puzzle feeders. Only provide those when they're separate. Toys may or may not cause conflict. If you know your own dog and know that they might become possessive of their toys, then probably pick up favorite toys and allow some playtime individually with each dog when the other dog isn't around. If they're lower value toys that they're not as likely to get upset about, maybe that's safe to have more free access to. But know your dog and keep an eye on your foster dog as well. Like in my house, generally toys are not anything that are contested between my dogs unless it's tennis ball. And I do have a few individuals in my house with strong feelings about tennis balls. So those only come out if we have one dog at a time. Those aren't loose around the house. And watch for competition over resting places, favorite beds, and attention from family members. And if you see one dog wandering over to where the other dog is resting, call them away. If you see some jostling and competing when one dog's getting pet, just stand up and walk away. Try to remove the situation totally that they're having some possessiveness about. And really, with the foster dog being kind of temporary, I think using management just as a long-term strategy for these things is the best strategy. For most multi-dog households, it's largely going to be management as well. And do know that this is the number one cause at HSHV of dog fights in foster dog homes. When we hear about a problem happening between a foster dog and a resident dog, it has overwhelmingly been because food bowls are out together or rawhides or things like that. So just be proactive and let's just not let these situations occur. So as your dogs are getting used to sharing space together, interacting, hopefully they're starting to want to engage and maybe play. A lot of times we get questions about how do we know that everybody's happy? What kind of body language we look for? How do we continue to make sure it goes well? So what we want to look for to make sure that interactions and play are going well are really loose and floppy and waggy and happy. So their bodies should be kind of free of tension, wiggly and curvy. Their mouths often will be open, faces kind of soft and free of signs of tension, like, wrinkled brows and stuff like that. Certainly some breed types can be harder to read because they have wrinkly faces or just different muzzle types, but open mouth, soft eyes that are kind of oval as opposed to round, kind of squinting, blinking, tails at whatever their normal posture would be, standing kind of at a normal posture, not cowering and low, not upright and high. Dogs have different ways of signaling to each other that all their interactions are in play and that they don't want harm. So play bows, like this kind of sable dog over here on the beach is doing, are kind of telling his new buddy that everything that follows is all in fun. He doesn't want any trouble. We like to see that. A lot of times play can involve kind of biting and grabbing on and mouth play, but it should be inhibited, meaning they're really not applying a lot of pressure. So certainly we should not be seeing injuries and broken skin and blood if this is truly play. So that's a good indicator. There's no injuries, it's a good sign. And there's no squealing, yiping, etc. We want to see pauses in play. So maybe they're romping around for a bit and then stop and shake off, or stop and play bow, or both sniff the ground for a little bit. If we aren't seeing breaks frequently, it's a good idea to kind of step in, call the dogs away, have them take a little breather for a second and go back to play. We like to see role reversal so that it's, mutually taking turns chasing or taking turns wrestling. It's not uncommon that one dog might be more likely to be the chaser or the sort of top dog in the wrestling match, but there should be a little bit of back and forth, and there should be breaks. If there's a wrestling game, but the bottom dog just cannot get up, we want to step in and give that bottom dog a break to see if he or she wants to continue. If one dog is being chased relentlessly, again, we want to grab the chaser for a second, see how the dog being chased feels. So sometimes we can just ask the question of how they're feeling by taking a break, holding the dog that's been the chaser or the top wrestling opponent, and see what the other dog chooses. Do they re-engage? Do they approach? Do they want to keep playing? Or are they shaking off, walking away, leaving, and saying that they're done? And that would be a good time to maybe separate the dogs into their different quiet areas and let them decompress and take a nap for a bit. Self-handicapping, meaning that the dog that is the faster or the bigger or the stronger is not using their full speed and weight and strength. They're trying to match their abilities with their friend that they're playing with. They're seeking each other out, remaining kind of close and in the same environment. Sometimes exaggerated movements. You might see dogs that do really big bounces or leaps or pounces. You might hear play growls and vocalizations. To some degree, that's normal. If it seems to be getting increasingly intense, might be a good time again to take a break. And dogs that are running should have kind of space between them, kind of side by side. And I often look for that, what we call like a rocking horse gait. So it's not digging in and running like they would after a squirrel, but more kind of this silly, goofy rocking gait that you can probably picture from seeing at the dog park. So yellow light would mean that maybe it's not necessarily a fight, but it's good to keep an eye on things, intervene, give them breaks, watch for any escalation. So as we're talking about, if there are a lack of role reversals, I mentioned some of this, one dog's being chased, one dog's pinned down a lot, bodies are looking more tense, some maybe signs of stress or uncertainty like lip licks, hackles being raised along their back. If one dog is getting cornered, one dog is continuing to hover over the other and lingering sniffing around the muzzle, doing the kind of chin over, standing over the other dog, being really chest to chest, putting the paw over, mounting, a single air snap. Those types of corrections can be appropriate in a lot of situations. It doesn't mean that you should get upset at the dog who maybe has done the air step. They might be communicating very well, like that's enough. So I don't freak out over one, but I do take it as information that somebody's saying they're getting a little tired of this and time to step in. We talked about kind of other displacement behaviors, chest butting, kind of really coming face to face versus side to side. And if another dog is showing signs that they're trying to check out, trying to leave, sniffing the ground, shaking off, going seeking help from the humans, and the other dog's not reading that, good time to step in and intervene, or continued grabbing and holding of the other dog. So these are a few pictures that I like that show some uncertainty during meetings. You'll notice that in most of these, the dog that's circled is kind of shifting their weight back. They're trying to get a little bit of distance. Maybe the greeting dog is coming into their space more than they want. So if I see that weight shifted back, I know that's saying to me that the dog's not totally comfortable. Their tails are pretty low. If you look at the pointer and this sort of, I don't know, ridgeback type looking dog, tails are low, ears are kind of back, their mouths are closed. These three dogs are all kind of saying, I need a little bit of space. I'm not certain about this. And then in this little chase game back here, he's turning back and doing a bit of a tooth display, maybe a warning air snap, maybe some indication that he's not exactly having fun with this chase game. And of course, our red light behaviors where you just need to end the play and probably get their dogs in separate areas for a bit. Hiding, tuck tails, lip licks, whale eye, meaning the whites of the eyes are visible. Dog who's really trying to flee and avoid interaction. Tense body posture, high tail, high head, inability to disengage on their own, stiff bodies, lunging, prolonged staring, and of course, growling, snarling, snapping, biting, not letting another dog up, and very intense vocalization. And finally, just a couple examples of good chase games versus bad chase games. On the left, we've got dogs, their mouths are open. This is kind of like that rocking horse gait that you can kind of see. Soft bodies, normal kind of tail posture, versus on the right, we've got tucked tails, lowered heads, mouths closed, their backs are rounded. These two guys on the right are not likely having much fun with that game. Okay. Any questions about body language before I kind of talk about what to do if things are going wrong? So if you are thinking that you need to sort of step in and intervene, ideally do that before there's an actual fight or conflict. So if we start to see those yellow flag behaviors, that's a good time then to start to rein it in a little bit. And ideally, our first thing we're going to try to do is recall the dogs to humans and away from each other using a food reward. This is probably best if you have two people, so that one dog can come to one person, the other dog to another, and you're distributing treats very separately so that there's not competition for the treats. We often recommend that you have your foster dog and probably resident dog at first dragging a leash for the first couple days while they're getting to know each other and getting used to sharing space. So if they've got the leash dragging, you can use it to just gently move the dog away and into another room or behind a gate. Squeaky toys or little squeakers can be a nice way to do an emergency recall, because a lot of dogs will orient to that sound. and are pretty attracted to it. So we do that in play groups, use a little squeaker in our pocket to just be a positive interrupter, get their attention, and then call them back to us. If things are getting a little more escalated and they're not able to disengage, they're not responding to your recall cue or a positive interrupter, then think about having something that you can put between the dogs to kind of block visual view and move them gently away. So something like a couch cushion, a piece of cardboard, the lid of like a Rubbermaid container, something like that can be a good visual barrier and physical barrier to prevent them from making contact while you kind of herd them into a different room. And then I only would resort to aversives if an actual fight is occurring. I don't recommend using these tools if there's just growing tension. You should be able to interrupt that with any of those first 4 strategies. But if a fight starts to break out, then sometimes aversives might be necessary to break it up. So that could be something like water, like a spray bottle, an air corrector, which is just compressed air, kind of like you use to clean your keyboard, makes kind of a sound. You can use citronella spray. Spray Shield is a brand name that's out there on the market. Citronella is not painful the way pepper spray would be. It's not going to affect everybody and have everyone's eyes watering. It's just going to kind of taste and smell a little funny for a bit and sort of surprise them to get them to stop. Loud noises such as banging some bowls, clapping hands. Probably most people don't have an air horn laying around their house, but we do have those at the shelter. Something to kind of interrupt. Again, these things are not a go-to, they're not training tools. These are emergency devices, and things to keep in mind are that if you're using them supposedly in training, you could create bigger problems. If every time the dogs interact, you're making loud noises or squirting them with water, down the road, that's going to cause more conflict because they start to associate each other with negative things happening. And keep in mind, that's going to affect all the dogs in the area. And dogs that maybe are sound sensitive, those loud noise strategies could be especially problematic. Do not reach for the collar or head. There's a high likelihood of being bitten if you kind of reach in there and try to grab a collar. If necessary, then the point to grab onto a dog that's in a fight is at their waist, right in front of their hips. Pretty much you need 2 people for this, ideally. So each person grabs a dog by the waist and lifts their feet off the ground and moves away. That is only really recommended if the dogs are doing kind of what we call kind of grab and release fighting. So if they're kind of sparring and biting and grabbing at each other, but not holding, if you do this wheelbarrow method, you can kind of catch them as they release and move them apart. If one dog has another dog and is biting down, doing a wheelbarrow method can cause more harm because it can cause some tearing. So with those, I would stick to water, spray guns, hoses, citronella, whatever, to try to get that dog to release and then pull them away from each other. But hopefully it has not come to that because we've used all the good proactive methods we've just been talking about for the last half hour. Any questions before I move on to cats? All right. So I'm going to talk about dogs and cats, but I want to be clear that this is assuming the scenario of you are bringing a foster dog into a home where you have a cat. The HSHV policy for fostering cats is that you're basically going to be keeping them separate from any resident dogs. So we're assuming that you already have a cat in the home and the dog being introduced is the foster. So one of the first keys to having successful dog cat interactions are to use slow introductions, and we're talking generally much slower than the dog to dog introductions. We're talking about spending days to weeks probably to get mostly full integration. We're not talking about hours. It's not like bringing your foster dog home in the afternoon and in the evening you're open up the door to the cat room. Really slow and gradual is the key. Cats are a species that don't really adjust to change super fast. And this could be a big change in their world. Also, we want to go very slow and careful and watching at every step to make sure that the cat is safe, because we may not have any idea how a particular dog is with a cat yet. So again, before you bring foster dog home, have a plan for what the cat space is going to be and the dog space is going to be in these early days. And make sure you get your cat comfortable with that space. If you're planning on keeping them confined to an upstairs or a particular bedroom, make sure that they're not distressed by being shut into that bedroom while you go about your daily business.
No, we'll shut the dog
It's not
in
fair to
the
have them scratching at the door and separated
No,
from the
the
family.
dog will. Yeah.
Make sure they enjoy that space and that they have all of their needs available. So before bringing the dog home, move litter box into wherever it's going to be in that space. Make sure they have cat towers, beds, scratching posts, food and water, and also make sure that you have a plan for how the cat's going to get social interaction and attention during that transition phase. Again, I don't want to see any cats just shut in the basement away from their homes and families because the foster dog's coming in. We want to make sure that they're getting fair amounts of attention too. And thinking about with management, having as many systems of redundancy as possible. I always say 2 things should have to fail for the animals to come into contact with each other unexpectedly. So maybe you have 2 baby gates in the hallway that's separating the animals, or you have a door to the bedroom shut, but you still have a baby gate in the hallway, or you have the door to the bedroom shut and you're keeping foster dog on leash in the house. So especially as you start to do gradual introductions, making sure that you have 2 safety measures in mind, and make sure you have escape routes and safe spaces throughout the home for your cat if and when you do eventually integrate them. So we don't want to have the cat go into the living room and then have to travel all the way across the floor to get out. So they have the risk of being cornered somewhere. They think about how you're setting up your cat trees and your furniture and baby gates so that kitty always has a route where they can get high or get through the room, not using the floor, and get to a space that the dog can't access. Before you even let the 2 species see each other, after the first day, you could do some scent swaps. So take a towel or blanket that they've each been laying on and swap them and put them in the other room. If you bring the dog scented blanket into the cat's area, one thing to think about is don't put the dog blanket on your cat's favorite resting perch. Make sure that they can still rest in their windowsill or their cat tree or their cat bed without having to smell the stink of the foster dog that you just brought in, but have it available in the room in a place that they can explore it and approach it and get some information by smelling it. After doing that, if everyone's kind of settling into the house, getting used to sounds on the other side of the doorway, etc., your foster dog's getting used to just being there, then maybe you can start doing some visual access to each other, but at a distance and with barriers. So again, maybe putting 2 baby gates in the hallway and letting them out at either end of the hallway so that they can start to see each other. And I like to just reinforce calm behavior on the part of both animals and really ignoring. I kind of think about when we're doing cross species introduction, anything that isn't getting magnetized towards the other animal is something that can be reinforced. And if either of them are struggling, you can increase distance, you can use short durations. So maybe one animal goes in and out of view and they're just seeing each other briefly, and taking breaks out of sight. I'm going to share a little video of kind of what a possible setup might look like when you're starting to allow the two to see each other. So in this scenario, my husband is sitting with our Chihuahua over here by, in the foreground. We've got the Chihuahua on leash, and we've got a baby gate between that room and the kitchen. And then I'm sitting with our cat, Brooke. She's on a little cat perch that she likes, and I've got treats. And we are going to reward both animals for chilling out on their respective beds and looking at each other and looking away. I'm gonna go ahead and play that.
Yes.
And you're gonna hear the parrot in the background too.
Yes.
The bull is saying yes when Pico looks over at the cat and then rewarding him so he's basically saying, good job, you looked at a cat without getting upset or screaming or getting out of your bed, and then rewarding him when he looks back.
Yes.
And those last few glances would be as long as I would allow. If he had stared much longer than that, I would think that he's very likely to start to maybe move towards the cat. Is getting a little too interested. So I want to see him be able to look away within about 2 to 3 seconds.
Yes.
Good. And over time, he's getting less and less interested, taking more brief glances. And on the other side, I was just pretty much feeding Brooke because she's putting up with a gross dog in her presence. So we're associating that dog with good things. From there, I would build up to maybe moving both animals closer to the gate, as long as they can maintain that same level of calm, and then work on removing barriers, but maybe keeping dog on leash, again, making sure the cat has opportunities to be free, and get to safety. And again, continuing to just reinforce my dog for not focusing on the cat. And that can be food, that can be play, that can be hanging out with a human and getting attention. I really want to discourage getting magnetized to the other animal and focus on, we can just be calm and leave each other alone in each other's presence. Any questions about that? All right. So one thing to think about are litter boxes. If you've never had a dog and a cat existing together, then it might surprise you to know, or maybe not, but dogs will inevitably find the litter box to be a source of treats, as gross as it is. They're not always the most sophisticated species. So that is guaranteed to happen, that your dog is going to want to get into the litter box, and your cat is not going to be pleased if the dog is in their litter box or harassing them when they're trying to eat or go to the bathroom. So the best strategy is just to use management. Using a cat door. Sometimes people, if they have multi-species households, will put a cat door in the door to a basement or a laundry room or something that your cat can get through, or getting a baby gate. Many of them have little tiny gates that can open up that are about cat size, so a cat can get through. Or if I didn't have a fancy gate, I've just raised it a couple inches off of the ground. If the dog is a small breed dog and can get through those types of things, you can perhaps make a route that's sort of up and over a gate. So having a cat tree next to it that they can jump onto and jump over the gate. Or if all else fails, one thing that I've had people do is get a cat door that is activated by a tag on a collar and install it inside to the door of the room that the litter box is in, and have the cat wear the collar that can activate that door so they can get through, but a toy breed dog can't because they won't have that collar on. And know that not all dogs are cat safe, and some may never be. So a dog that is highly predatory and very much genetically wired to want to chase small furry animals that run is probably never going to be a good fit for a home with a cat. So things to look for are, during these early steps, is the dog overly fixated and obsessed? Can they not look away after a few seconds the way Pico was, but they're staring, they're straining, they're at the end of the leash, they're whining or vocalizing. They cannot calm down in the presence of a cat, no matter how short that duration is or how far away they are. If they're obsessing over the door to the cat room, I've seen dogs that simply can't stop being at the cat door, pawing at it, scratching at it, whining at it, trying to get in. If they make persistent attempts to chase every time they see the cat, very intensely, targeting them, this is probably not going to be safe at any point. And so let us know and we'll refoster the dog. We can now have information that the dog needs to go to a cat-free home. So you'll help us find a successful foster, find a successful home. They'll give us good information, but please always err on the side of safety for your cat. And similarly, other small animals. So guinea pigs, ferrets, rabbits, parrots, reptiles, etc. Really think about management and safety first. I'm a firm believer that predators and prey animals should never be commingling. I know there are lots of Instagram moments out there that are made to look sweet and appealing, of the parakeets hanging out on top of the cat and the guinea pigs hanging out with the large breed dogs. In my multi-species household, which includes dogs, cats, hedgehog, rats, birds of various sizes, reptiles, chickens, my predators are never ever coming into contact with my prey animals. Predation is just too hardwired. Even the best trained dog, most mellow dog on the planet, can have that reflexive response if an animal runs or vocalizes or does something to trigger that predatory sequence. So keep them separate. Don't try to take any Instagram moment photos of them hanging out together. If you're small mammals, or I guess not necessarily mammals, if you're small animals, cages are in a room that you can just keep the foster dog out of totally. That's great. I realize it's not always possible, but if so, then that dog just doesn't need to go in that room. If the crates are in an area that the dog will be hanging out, definitely for the first several days or so, leave that leash dragging and supervise whenever they're around the cages. Make sure that the cages are off grade, ground level, they're on a stable surface, and they're not going to be able to be like knocked over by the dog. So one thing I want to talk about is kind of long-term management, and, are there ever times where integration isn't the goal? And absolutely, there may be times that you just decide to separate and manage and not really try to do introductions or full integration with the other pets in the home. Some probably good examples of that would be short-term fosters, a medical foster that might have an issue that, it really, for their own kind of safety and health, need to not be hanging out with other animals. pregnant dogs or moms and their pups, or young puppies. Probably they're going to be just kept in a separate room or area of the house away from them with the other animals. If you have like a significant age and size difference, and you know that they're just not, or just a personality conflict, you think these two are just very, very opposite animals, not ones that are gonna ever really fall in love and want to hang out all the time, you might decide that it's easiest to not do full integration. And when I say mild personality conflicts, I mean, if you have a kind of dog selective dog, or who can be a little bit possessive of their people, but it's not going to be a huge clash, it might be appropriate to just kind of rotate, separate, depending on the number of people in your home and the makeup of the house, if that's feasible. Some people can make that work just fine. But the big thing to think about is two things. First of all, safety. If you have animals that need to be separate from each other the majority of the time, we do want to think about, if the management was going to fail, what's the likely result? If it's just going to be that somebody gets annoyed, or there's a little bit of barking, and they have to be kind of called away after a big kind of exciting episode, that's okay. If management failure means another member of the household, or one of them is going to be potentially injured or worse, we don't want to take that risk. Management is okay in situations where we're not talking about serious injury, or fatal consequences, but just for the sake of each animal's, I guess, mental health, they would prefer not to hang out in the same room together. And consider quality of life for all members of the household, including the humans. So I really don't want to hear of a resident dog or a foster dog that's being extremely socially isolated, or extremely under-exercised or understimulated because they have to spend so much time in a crate or in a confinement area or in a bedroom by themselves. I don't think that's certainly not fair to the resident animals. And, you know, the foster dogs, we'd prefer to get them into an area where they can be more integrated into a family so we can refoster them. And think about the human side as well. If it becomes very stressful, if it becomes to be a lot of work trying to divide your time among the animals in their separate spaces, that's very legitimate too. And again, we can refoster in those situations. All right. So I want to just kind of open up to any questions people might have. Try to stay into my time limit. Yes. All right. So any questions?
Angela?
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but it's more a comment going back to the dog and toys.
Yeah.
So if you have a foster dog that's not allowed soft toys,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you're picking them up all the time, or else you might have a resource guarding issue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking you were saying from a safety issue, like that dog is
Well, that too.
devour it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. If that's something that they're not normally allowed access to, then that's going to potentially be a really high value item. And so you're saying like more likely to be something that they'll guard because it's a forbidden treasure, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point. All right. Oops. Any other questions? Trying to stop my screen share. Any feedback for what other topics you might like in these incoming months? I know one thing that we were debating, I was conflicted between this topic and talking about reactivity, because I know that's a huge issue as well, whether it's dog directed reactivity or bikes, cars, etc. So that's one topic we kind of have in the works. Any other things in particular that come to mind that you would like to hear more about? All right. Well, if you think of anything, definitely pop us an email. I've certainly got lots of things in mind. Hopefully these are helpful, these presentations, and helping you like also feel more confident in, here we go, in taking on some of our dogs, whether you're a new dog foster and you have animals and you're just wondering how would that work to bring a dog into your home, or if you've fostered before and we're worried about potential conflicts. Hopefully this gives an idea of how to like negotiate those situations, manage them better. But thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you for fostering. Let us know how we can help. These are the, I don't know, I can't get the screen to come up on my, well, sorry, I'm just trying to get my final slide with the email addresses. Okay, I can't do it. You'll have, you can get the email addresses, but mine is angela.s@hshv.org, or just the fosters at hshv.org is another way to reach us for any help. But thanks so much. Let us know what we can do for you, and thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Angela.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.